Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm here with my good friend. He needs no introduction. Spencer Love, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Dude, I'm good. It's always great. You know, we hopped on 45 minutes ago. So it's almost like most of the time you'd be wrapping up an interview, I would assume, by this point. But, man, it's always nice. You know, like I've said, you're always not only a mentor, an influence, a favorite professional wrestler. Let's put you over. But, like, a guy I love shooting the shit with. So it's good to be on camera after an hour.
I was gonna say, you and I, we got to be careful, man. That's why we did an episode before we started the episode.
The prequel to the prequel. We did
exactly.
What was it? I can't even remember episode 3. I'm gonna make a bad Star Wars joke and I'm gonna ruin it by not remembering.
Well,
Return of the Duke and Spencer, I suppose.
Well, for sure. It's been a long time. There's a lot to catch up on, man. Like you've gone from, and I'm just going to get right into it. You've gone from podcaster extraordinaire with a really nice following and an excellent podcast and a nice, very talented crew of people you've put together on the Love Wrestling Network for sure. But you are now also a professional wrestling promoter because apparently you like the boys and hate money.
Shit.
Yeah, if you hate money,
I couldn't have put it any better.
Yeah, if you hate
and
money,
if you are looking for sponsorship of Love Wrestling, apparently I hate money, but you know what? I do really like the boys, and I do really love professional wrestling. So, like,
that wasn't
number
fair,
one, thank you.
I've seen the highlights of your first couple of shows, and you're drawing very, very well.
Yeah, man. And you know what? Like, the nice thing for me, and I've said this to a couple of people, is the thing that I love about Love Pro Wrestling LPW is like not only do I get to work with a lot of great people behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, like obviously, like you said, you've seen the highlights, and I'd put our pro wrestling and put our pro cheers to you too, friend. You're sneaking in. Hello, you knew I was talking to Duke, didn't you? God, you handsome boy. 3 handsome boys on a podcast. No, but the nice thing for me is, like, I have said since the start, and there are certainly things that I want to fix and certainly things that you can do better. You can always do better with any new business, right? But I am very, very happy that we've done 2 shows, and I am incredibly confident that we've put on a great pro wrestling product. Anybody that has attended live, like, you've been lucky enough, and I say this with a lot of confidence, to see the best of the best. There's really no other way to put it. Not the best of the best of Albertan pro wrestling, and not the best of the best of women's wrestling, not the best of the best of Pacific Northwest. Like, you've seen the best of the best, whether you're talking about MRB or Nicole Matthews or KC or Zoe or Ava or TFA, the Love Wrestling Challenge champion, or Golden Boy Travis Williams or Randy. You're like, dude, I could,
Mo Jabari,
you know, I'm sure
the talent pool is deep.
Thing is, like, I'm sure you can relate, is like, once you start naming talent, you almost have to name all 24 people that were on the card of the last show. Is like,
well, that's what happens, right? Like, we've got these good talents, and everybody on the show is a good talent.
You want to, and that's the coolest thing for me, is not only do you have great talent in LPW, and I'm confident with that, but, like, man, we're so lucky to have great people involved. And whether that's talking about, again, the wrestlers, whether it's talking about Thomas, who's done all the video production, whether it's talking about Gavin, who's done all the filming and helped out with so much. Like, so many people have given us compliments on the ring ropes. That was all Gavin. And that's all because that guy is, like, the best of the best of a visual presentation.
Gavin's the gentleman that does all the promos. Am I thinking of the right guy?
Yeah, man.
Okay, so I met him at the Battle of the Dome, man. What a great guy.
Big old stud. You've got Thaddeus Archer III, who, like, you know, maybe fired me from the Archer Report, so I'll choose my words carefully. But again, just a hell of a human being, and someone I know I don't need to tell you is one of the most talented managers. Not, again, in Alberta.
That kid's got charisma to spare.
Man, he is the man. I have no other way to put it.
And I mean, you know, if you're doing business with him, I've seen his character. If you're doing business with him, he can be a bit tough to do business with.
And that's why I chose.
But to sit in the locker room and have a BS with, he's a good guy, you know.
Oh my God, one of the best. And
Yeah.
like we are incredibly lucky. And I say that with like full credit to the hard work I've put in. But like, dude, I'm incredibly lucky. I am at the end of the day, dude, a random fucking mark in Edmonton, Alberta, who got into this with no backing, no training, no nothing like that. And because of the good grace of good individuals, and again, my hard work, I won't discredit that, is lucky enough to be able to do something I think is a very, very cool thing for Canadian pro wrestling.
I mean, the thing is, I think most importantly, when you start any business, I don't care whether you're, you know, starting a wrestling promotion or opening a food store or, you know, you're fixing cars, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. The people that are coming to buy your product have to know you're as passionate about it at least as they are. You know what I mean? And that's definitely what I feel from you.
One of the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten before I started getting into marketing and media and before I graduated and all that sort of stuff. Like I was literally a line cook and then I became manager at Joey Restaurants, Joey Tomatoes.
Right. Yeah.
So Mike Steele, and I'll send him this clip because he'll pop for it. But Mike Steele, he is the best cook I've ever met, but he's also one of the people I learned the most from. And he taught me that like you can teach people anything. You can teach them how to cook, you can teach them how to cut, you can teach them how to do anything. You can't teach them to give a fuck. You can't teach anybody to give a fuck.
I don't use the teaching. I use payment. You can pay a guy $1 million a year, but you still can't pay him enough to care.
Yeah.
If a guy's not going to give a fuck, he ain't going to give a fuck. Doesn't matter what he's doing.
And like that was one of the best pieces and the most fundamental pieces of advice that I've ever taken forward is like, you know what, man, if you're not in something, because like, let's get real here. I think I was pretty good at cooking,
right?
But I didn't care at the end of the day. And I didn't care enough to progress it to be my career. I really enjoyed it. Did I care enough? Not particularly, if we're being honest.
Right.
But Mike taught me that like, whatever you're in, if you're in it, you have to care. You can't half-ass two things. You have to whole-ass one thing. So for me, that's something I've tried to take forward in anything, whether it's my work with the Sherwood Park Crusaders, and I love my work with them, and whether it's professional wrestling, which, like, to be quite honest with you, much more than the Crusaders, is a passion project. Yeah. Like you said off the bat, man, is like, you know, I love the boys. It wasn't like you get into professional wrestling, whether it's working, whether it's promoting, whether it's video management, whatever, to say, shit, I'm going to make a lot of money at this. But holy shit, man, do I love it. And I appreciate you like noticing the passion, because for me, that's fundamental. At least I like to think in anything I try to do.
Well, your passion for pro wrestling is one of the reasons my podcast exists, right? Because you got this infectious personality, man. And it's just like, man, this guy, yeah, I should do it too. Cause it looks so fun when you do it. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
man, awesome, I've never been afraid, as dumb of a opening sentence as this is going to be. Never been afraid to make an idiot of myself. But like with that comes a lot of confidence.
You'd be a perfect heel.
And I agree. I'd be pretty good at it.
In life in general,
I like people coming through and popping for me. In my former work as an RCW ring announcer, people used to pop, but that's neither here nor there. I like making people.
There's a lot of us that say there's a lot of people that say former work at RCW.
Well, and that's neither here nor there. I'll let you tell that story. But for me, man, I love making people happy, and I love going out there and making people happy in the most absurd way possible, for lack of a better way to put it. Like with so much content out there, with so much out there on the internet, with so much out there in television and movies and whatever, like you know, not gonna be ridiculous. And sorry as I get distracted while JP comes back for pets, you handsome man. But you've got to be ridiculous in a way that's true to you, if that makes sense. Like I love going out there,
but also in a way that the fans or people like myself see that it's organic.
True. And that's sort of where I was going, is like, for me, I've never been scared of going out there and winging it and reacting to a great professional wrestling match.
You can't be scared to eat shit.
Yeah. And for lack of a better way to put it, Duke, like going out there and eating time during the 50-50 while, you know, you're waiting for a number to get drawn or whatever X, Y, or fucking Z may be. Like, I love going out there and making people happy and interacting with people and making people feel they're in a welcoming environment to have, that same feeling. That's the least
Yeah.
eloquent way I can put it. But like, as a pro wrestling fan, let's get real. It's pretty awkward when, you're used to going to an Oilers game or an Eskimos Elks game, excuse me, Roughnecks game, whatever it may be. Like, it's almost kind of hard when you're conditioned at those sorts of games to like not yell at the performers, not be rude, not be
Right.
bombastic or whatever, to get into that at a pro wrestling show. So if
Yeah,
I,
well,
as a
that's-
host, or if I am as a promoter or whatever, am going out there and saying, get loud, bang on the edges of the ring. Look at me, I screwed up the introduction to the Larry versus Rich versus Mo match. You
Yeah.
can check out that actually happened. I've fucked up intros of both the shows I've ran. But if you go out there and like you embrace it and you encourage people to be enthusiastic about the thing that you love, they're gonna love it. And at the end of the day, man, like, taken from the brand, but I love pro wrestling. And the more people that love pro wrestling, the more people that are gonna come out to shows and gonna have a beverage at the Rec Room South Common. And the more people that are gonna do it sooner rather than later, because we've got tickets available for April 29th at the Rec Room South Common, featuring Michael Richard Blaze versus Randy Myers edition sequel. It's gonna be great.
Your sound cut out on that last bit there. What was
Oh,
that?
damn.
Yeah. Sick.
I
That was a
tried
good
to
promo, man. That was a
but I
good
didn't.
promo.
Tried my best and had fun. But, to go back to the earlier conversation, I've made an idiot of myself before, so the sound cuts out. I'm just going to keep going about how Randy Myers is back in Alberta consistently for the first time in 12 years, wrestling Michael Richard Blaze, who, yeah, of course, TJ deserves credit and fully deserves credit for being the mentor of MRB, but nobody mentions the fact that Randy Myers taught MRB to take his first bumps, lost to MRB at the first ever Love Pro Wrestling show, and is looking for vengeance in the most loving, positive, enthusiastic way that Randy Myers can.
I wasn't involved in that camp. I wasn't involved in that camp, but I was around that gym a lot at that time. And yeah, there was a time when Randy Myers was, TJ was running the show. And then when TJ couldn't make it for whatever reason, it was Randy Myers running the show there.
And that's exactly it, man. Like, me, man, I'm never going to take stuff away from TJ, but I'm going to put over great people. And Randy Myers is the guy who taught MRB to take his first bumps, is the first guy who was in there doing it. So, yeah, I'm excited as hell that we get the opportunity to do that. And even when I screw up on my promos and even when my sound cuts out, I'm still going to be enthusiastic as all hell that like this is happening, dude, in Edmonton, Alberta.
Thing is, it's live. It's one take, man. Right.
And that's the best part about pro wrestling. I'm sure you've tried to describe it to non-wrestling fans in a million ways. Like, it's performance, dance, ballet, theater in the round, combat, whatever way you choose to put those words.
I simplify it for people, man. It's ballet, but the dancers hit each other.
Well, then I'm going to take that from you because like,
when done,
that's the way you can put it.
When done properly, and this is where people will, they can feel free to at me, but when it's done properly, man, it's beautiful. Like it really is when it's done properly.
Way I've ever heard.
Beautiful.
And I'm paraphrasing here, but he did his first scrum for AEW, and Bryan Danielson came out and he said, "When pro wrestling is done excellently, people will watch it because pro wrestling done excellently is fucking awesome."
It is,
and if you got to blank that out, man, cool. But like,
I don't have to blank anything. Well, no, but
there we go. So
people are like, "Oh, it's too violent. It's simulated."
Awesome.
Well, people talk about it's too violent or it's simulated fighting. Well, every movie or television show you watch has violence. Well, I shouldn't say every, but most of what we see, a lot of what we see from Hollywood is simulated violence. And people, people want to attack wrestling at its weakest point, and they'll say, "Oh, it's fake." Well, okay, but so is every Avengers movie you've ever watched. Do you know what I mean?
For me, man, like the best way I can put it is like I'm as much of a pacifist as you can possibly call it. Like, I'm not a violent person. I'm not a huge UFC fan. I'm not a huge boxing fan. Like, I'm not a very violent individual.
Right.
Shit, I'm 165 pounds soaking wet wearing boots, Duke. I can't afford to be a violent person.
Yeah, but I bet Bruce Lee was about that size.
Don't compare me there. But for me, like pro wrestling, and as silly as it might sound, is like it sort of exemplifies the best of both worlds for me. And that was one of the reasons that I initially was drawn to it. Is like you have people going out there, and yes, it's a violent sport. Yes, accidents happen. Yes, there is certainly tragic accidents that happen. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, in a way that say UFC and boxing are about going out there and beating the fuck out of your opponents.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling is the antithesis of that while exemplifying the same reasoning, as weird as that might sound. You're going out there, you want to beat your opponent, you want to put on excellent matches, you want to go out there and make this look as real as possible. But at the end of the day, you're looking to take care of your opponent, not hurt anybody, have them go home safe to their families.
Well,
And not to knock what the people in the UFC and that sort of stuff do, because by no means do I think that anybody's out there to actively hurt or embed anybody, for lack of a better way to put
they're
it.
trying to knock
But
each other
they-
up. They're not trying to maim each other, and that's
exactly. But they do that in a level that pro wrestling doesn't, and
Yeah.
that maybe was why, for me, I was more drawn to pro wrestling off
Well,
of that. is it
that's one of
gives
the
you that
reasons
best of both worlds.
that's one of the reasons you can fight 4 times a year versus wrestle 200 times a year. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly.
You know.
Right. And like, I certainly understand again the lucrativeness that comes with UFC, and I certainly understand like people
Wow.
get in there and they expect
You know what, man?
they expect. But
I'm gonna
people are able to
go
get
hard.
there
Actually, I've been thinking, and okay, you might have just got me on a soapbox here right now. I'm gonna go hard on UFC fighter pay right now. I'm telling you right now, I don't care what anyone says, until you're excuse me, in the top, and I'm talking very top of your, like, I'm talking top 10 isn't even good enough for you to actually make it what I would consider, by the time you have to pay your trainers, agents, etc. You have to basically be top 3 to actually be making a really good living at UFC. Otherwise, I think there's better money to be made in pro wrestling. UFC fighter pay is 100% dog shit. There's guys fighting on fucking UFC pay-per-views for $12,000 to show up, $12,000 to get your head kicked off, and then another $12,000 to win.
holy cow.
So 20, if the guy that loses only gets 12 grand if he's lucky. I've seen some of those guys fight for as little as $8,000.
Well, and like
Right?
you say, if they're only going out there and fighting, and I'm out of my wheelhouse here, so everything I'm saying is like conjecture. Don't get me wrong, but like
if you're
going
lucky,
out there twice a year,
That's
at
probably
say
average.
the bare minimum of $8,000 to $12,000, like
yeah.
you're not making much more than like a baggage clerk. for
No,
lack
you're
of a
actually
better way
making,
to
when
put
you
it.
consider the amount of time that you put into training, when you consider that if you're an honorable guy, you're probably giving your coach 10%. If you got an agent, he's taking probably somewhere between 3 and 7, 10%. Then you've got to pay taxes on that. You're making sweet fuck all.
Well, you've given me another reason to love pro wrestling more than
Well,
the UFC.
and here's the other thing: the guy that owns the company that owns the UFC, most of it's stock. He only made $67.5 million last year in cash.
Poor
Yeah.
Dana White.
No, this isn't Dana White. This is like Dana White's boss now. This is the people that they sold UFC to.
Okay.
In cash and stock, this guy made $308 million last year. And this motherfucker is paying people $12,000 to risk their lives in a cage. Fuck that guy.
Well, I
That's
will.
how I feel about that.
I will wholeheartedly agree. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I'm behind you.
Yeah.
That makes
when-
2 of us.
Well, and the thing is, and you as somebody that's a fledgling promoter, when you look at your cost analysis, right? When you look at most businesses' cost analysis, when you look at most professional sports, their employee wage, I'll say, or athletes' wages, basically payroll, is essentially somewhere between 40 and 60% of their team expense.
Yeah.
WWE used to be 15. That's come way up. UFC right now, they're saying is about 12%.
Holy shit.
So, people are talking about UFC fighter pay, man. There's a fucking reason, right? The guys are fighting for the world championship for $600,000.
Well, and even just the split, and again, where my before all of this came from was like the split on sponsorship is absolutely insane. If a
Mhm.
fighter is going out and earning a sponsorship for themselves, then at a worst, and again,
Yeah.
not knowing really the economics of the business outside of pro wrestling and even outside of what I do in pro wrestling, like you'd have to assume that's at least a 50-50 split. And anything would favor the fighters if they're going out and earning a
Well, and that's what I say,
sponsorship.
right? Like
So
if I don't know, Joe's Hardware says, "Hey, we want to Spencer, we'd like to sponsor, your athlete Duke Durango. We'll give you $20 if you'll paste our name on his tights." Okay, now it's up to you and me to come up to an arrangement of how much I'm willing to give you of that
exactly.
sponsor, or you know what I mean? And everybody gets a taste instead of just saying, no, we're going to keep the Reebok money and fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Right? Or now it's
Very
Venom.
weird.
Yeah. Well,
Very weird, man.
I mean,
I'll have to look into that because it's certainly like again, I'm batting out of my weight class with that.
yeah. Well, in fairness to
that's
UFC, I
weird
think
as hell.
in fairness to UFC, I do believe the athletes get some sort of like a little sponsorship bonus on every fight, or
Okay.
you know what I mean? So there's something there, but yeah, like unless you're a top guy, man, like it's amazing to me that a pay-per-view will sell 800,000 buys and a guy makes $40,000 to fight on it.
Holy cow.
Like,
That's
I
insane.
can't even get my
That's
head around it.
absolutely freaking insane.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I say, Francis Ngannou, that's a name you've probably heard. You don't even follow UFC. You know who the heavyweight champion is. That guy's last fight, he made $600,000, nothing to win. Straight up $600,000. Right? That guy probably sold almost 1 million buys at $70 a buy. You're paying that guy less than 10%.
Even if it's $1 a buy, you're
right?
making money. Jesus.
Well, see, and that's the thing is what people aren't seeing is the average fan doesn't see this. Now we'll move on to something else. But what the average fan or the fighter doesn't see is guys like Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture sacrificed themselves to build what's here now. That's why for a long time that before Dana White and the Tata brothers sold the UFC, they still had guys like Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture on their payroll because they were getting basically pensioned for what they had done for the UFC when the money wasn't there. Right. So now the guy's money, instead of paying those guys because they cut ties with all that, the new company said, we're not paying those wages. Now they're paying for performance centers everywhere. Right. There's one in Vegas. They want to build one in Brazil. They probably want to build one in Thailand, I'm assuming. You know what I mean? So now your wages, you're not only getting paid to fight, but you're also being taxed on your wage, whether you realize or not, to support the other things the UFC wants to do with your pay-per-view money.
That's nuts, man.
Right.
That's freaking nuts.
And then I'm going to go now. This is where I go hard on UFC and the WWE is these fighters are all under contract. They can go nowhere else. They can accept no sponsorships. They can accept no endorsements. They can accept nothing outside that company. They have no health care. They have no pension. But they're independent contractors.
Well, and like,
I have a hard time with that,
me fired up. No, man,
yeah, I'm not a union guy, but come on.
Well, and it's insane to me is if I'm to hire an electrician, I moved into a new house 6 months ago, less than. If I'm to hire an electrician, I am going to try and source the most inexpensive price for value they can.
100%.
The other electricians, while I'm negotiating with them, they are not barred from working elsewhere. They are not prohibited from, while they are working for me, going and working elsewhere, provided that my job is done. And again, it's not really somewhere that I've got an area of expertise. I certainly have an opinion though. Yeah. Which is internet as is, so I'm going to go ahead. Right? It's insane to me in professional wrestling, and even AEW, WWE, Ring of Honor, freaking MLW, whatever. They've got actual contracts paying people to be where they are and to hold certain dates and to work elsewhere. And the insurance part, the health insurance part, is a different story. I know that at least WWE, and I don't.
Here's the thing, man. When you'll free up the
WWE
athlete to go work anywhere else, he is an independent contractor. At that point, he's on his own. If he's an indentured servant, you have to give him some or her
somewhere that like, and that's somewhere that like WWE. And again, I can't speak to what other promotions have done, so I'm only singling one out in a positive way.
Well, and I don't want to piss on UFC because they've made a lot of the WWE they've made a lot of wrestlers very wealthy, and they're the biggest.
For sure.
They're the
And
biggest
and
thing in the
and
world.
from what
So,
I've heard
you
is
know,
that when individuals have to, like Moxley's an example that I've got
Yeah.
recently, is when he went to rehab, they paid for it, at least
that
as far
wellness
as I'm
program
aware.
has done a lot of good for a lot of people, for sure.
Yes, I do agree that WWE's done well there.
Yeah, 100%. And no one can
Should there
deny
be
that,
a more no, and should there be a more formal policy across sports, entertainment, wrestling, whatever? Yes, 100%. But even for me, man, and not to get too into her, but like we're sitting here talking about Love Pro Wrestling and independent professional wrestling in Alberta and Canada and the United States and whatever, and people are being told, well, you're allowed to work here, but you can't work there. Are you freaking kidding me? When like the hot dog and the handshake is the proverbial best that you can give some people, and the best you can give people is a week's worth of bookings and not guarantee a next week, or no health insurance or no medic on site when you've got a professional wrestling event going on, or whatever it may be. That's where I start to get issues, is because by no means do I doubt, and there are horror stories, don't get me wrong, but I don't doubt that WWE or AEW or any of those major promotions you talk about, they're not going to do wrong by people when it comes to their health, when it comes to rehab, when it comes to anything like that. When you look at the local level, when we're talking about this independent contractor, Duke, like a lot of people take independent contractor way too seriously for people who like aren't paying people on the 15th and 30th of the month. You know what I mean? It's very, very odd to me that people would ever want to limit any sort of opportunities for the people who, like, as a promoter, dude, the way that I look at it, any people who choose to take a chance on coming to Edmonton, Alberta, and working for us, whether they live here, whether they're from Tuscany, Timbuktu, Vancouver, Vaughan, or wherever it may be, I, as a promoter, am privileged and lucky that they're coming out to work for me. So we do right by them. It's very odd to me.
I'm going to push back.
I'm
going to push back a little bit from the promoter side. Okay.
Okay.
Being a promoter,
I like pushback. I've been told I'm wrong before, dude.
No. At no point here am I telling you you're wrong. I'm offering a perspective. Okay. So going back when I was breaking in, there was training schools that had promotions attached to them. Okay. So a kid has paid for the training school, which again, to me, once you make that deal for whatever that is, you've paid your money. You're free to do whatever you want when the training's done. Okay. And I want to make that clear. But the person's given you their time, right? Or you've paid for their time. Sorry. Then they start putting you on shows. They start putting you on posters. They give you all the experience. They promote you. They build you up to be a main event guy. Okay. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, Johnny Promoter comes into town, decides he wants to promote a show. He knows you're the top guy at Johnny X Wrestling, and he wants to bring Spencer Love over to his show because he knows you're the top draw.
That's main event Spencer Love, by the way.
Sorry. Main event. We need main event Spencer Love in our main event at this X Pro Wrestling, And so it's not that I, as an independent wrestler, of course I see that I should be able to work anywhere I want. But I can tell you, as an independent wrestling, having been a promoter, I've also used the language in you can work for whoever you want, just not in the cities we run.
So here's my perspective. And I think a lot of it, to be honest with you, Duke, comes from the fact that, like, coming up again in Joey's. So
can I add the caveat? None of these promotions today have wrestling schools that they're building up guys from zero to. And
even then, like, I don't
know, man. I think you deserve a return on your investment before somebody else can take you away.
I agree. But the thing is, if you invest in something, you better be prepared to pay for that investment when that investment comes back around.
That's true.
So for me, when I worked with Joey's, I was very clearly told that if I left Joey's, no matter when I left, no matter how I left, if I quit, if I was fired, if I whatever, I was not allowed to work for specifically Cactus Club, Moxie's, or Earl's. I was not allowed to work
anything at Earl's.
So no.
Pay a little, eat a lot. Fuck that place.
So hey, their chicken tenders are the best in the country. I'll stand by that. But So I was not allowed to work for them, regardless of how I left my position at
Right.
Joey's, regardless of what that position was, for 6 months. My
and
thought
I've
for
been in
that,
positions
no,
where you
so
have, that's a non-compete clause. But here's
so
my
I
argument
never,
against that.
So again, so here's my thing. Here's my thing, and I'll get on my soapbox. I never signed a contract.
Yeah.
The same way that I would hazard a guess that in your years of pro wrestling, in the same way that 99.9% of pro wrestlers here have not ever signed a contract with a promotion, no one has any effective non-compete clause. Fuck WWE when CM Punk sued him. CM Punk won in favor of their non-compete clause. Brock Lesnar won in favor of their non-compete clause. And that's why Brock never had to give up
But you
money.
can't take away.
And that's
Here's
the
the thing,
Fed.
man.
So
No,
for
you're
me,
talking about taking away someone's right to make a living.
But so
I'm
when
not
when
doing
I'm
that.
no, but if you're if you're a promoter and you're paying $20 to a person and you say you're not allowed to make $20 elsewhere,
First and foremost, as a
and
fucking
that's
promoter,
the worst of the
anybody
worst.
that ever
And
worked for
that's
me can
that-
chime
that's
in.
the
I never
worst.
paid anybody but a ref $20.
Another entirely different story. But for me, so if promotion XYZ brought up a wrestler, promoted a wrestler, paid a wrestler their $20,000, $40,000, $100 million, whatever that promotion valued them at. If I, as promoter ABC, said, I feel that this professional wrestler is worth much more than their promotion's paying them. The same way that Evolve, or the same way that Progress, or the same way that many other
No, that's fair. But most of these guys aren't in a position where the promoter's really paying them more. Let's
And
not
that
bullshit
is-
each other
and
on
that,
this.
my friend, is an issue on the business owner's end.
Yeah.
Because people want to talk about the wrestling business. If you can't pay your employees, you ain't a business.
Well,
You're asking for volunteer help.
I'm gonna be the first one. I will tell you, and I will pat my own back a little bit, just a tiny bit on this, in that I took some time away, and then PWA sprung up, CCW in Edmonton, I think it was called CCW in Edmonton sprung up, and I was looking at coming back, and I was one of the first guys to say, if you can't afford to give me a guarantee, you can't afford to run a show. Right?
Bingo.
Because
And-
I've been stiff,
and for
right?
me, and I say this, dude, and I will fully, I will fully say, like, I'm going into my third show, not my 30th, not my
Right.
300th, as quite literally, whether you're talking about M, P, or R, all those other promotions have run hundreds of more shows than I have, and they've done effectively, and they've done good business, and they've treated their wrestlers right for the most part, and I won't ever begrudge anyone, or I won't ever take away from that. I'm pretty firm in my belief that, like, when you get to the point, or if you can't get to the point where you're saying, hey, I value you at blank, you also value you at this same blank, let's have you come in and work for us. It's weird to me because, frick, I'm a ring announcer, and an
Yeah.
unemployed
Well,
ring announcer in some promotions here.
Here's what
But
you're about to find out as a promoter, and this is
Oh, that's gonna kick me in the balls, is what
a
I'm
little
about to
bit.
find
You're
out.
about to find something out as a promoter.
Oh, I'll get kicked. Don't get me wrong there.
No, but sometimes my opinion on most independent wrestling shows is that the fans are generally coming to the show. There's no one person that's really going to affect the draw that much, if that makes sense. So what you're going to find is you're going to pay a lot of money to bring people in, and they're going to add to the show, but they're not necessarily going to pop your draw. And I think that, hold on, I think when wrestlers walk around wagging their dicks, talking about their fucking value, watch what happens when you leave. The draw stays the same.
See, and that's the thing, is number one, I don't think the draw stays the same, because I've been coming out to shows for a long time and the draw hasn't stayed the same.
Then
I
that
would
company hasn't
also
done a good job
say-
of building the next guy.
Well, and for me, and you're bang on. But for me, I think that, again, we talked earlier about pieces of fundamental advice people have received. And for me, another piece of fundamental advice that I received is from Speedball Bailey. And I think that a lot of people get in the habit, whether you're talking about wrestler, promoter, video guy, whatever it may be, of competing with the best in your area. And I've always again been of the belief that like I'm not here to compete with the best of my area. I'm not here to compete.
No, do your own thing. You can't worry
I'm
about
here
what
to
they're
do
doing.
what I can do best. But
Yeah.
I'm also not here to be the best in Edmonton. I'm not here to be the best in Alberta, in Western Canada, in the Pacific Northwest. You know, I'm sure you've heard people like Punk or Edge or any of these individuals say no one gets into professional wrestling to be the best of the middle class. I think that if you're in professional wrestling, you have to be out there and comparing yourself with the best of the best. So the reason I bring up the Pacific Northwest is like, you look at promotions like NEW and Defy, holy shit. Like, I love what we're doing, but they've done what we're doing for years. We have to compete with that sort of stuff. And you have to compete with a Progress, and you have to compete with a Mission Pro, and you have to compete with the best of the best, not in Alberta, not in Canada, but across the Northwest and across North America and across the UK and across the fucking globe. When it comes to me, I think that there are those sorts of draws, because when I look at promotions that I love right now, you know, GCW has done incredible business for the last 10 years.
Right.
Over the last 6 months, with doing their stuff with Cardona and doing their stuff with Jeff Jarrett, they have an insane amount of new eyes on them. And not because GCW was great, because they were, but because GCW took a risk on great independent contractors, exploited them, and exploited isn't the right word, promoted is probably the best word, because we're promoters, promoted them to the best of their ability, and brought people in on individual draws and storylines. The best promotions in the world right now, Duke, two things by my money. They put on great matches and they get them out there effectively. So by my money, and I need to do a better job, because man, if we have a main event like MRB versus Golden Boy Travis Williams, I need to be putting that out the next day, because holy shit, that's going to tear the world apart when we put that out. Those two are incredible athletes and the world needs to see that. So I need to do a better job on my end of learning how to video edit and learning how to edit commentary and put that out, so that I put that out effectively timeline wise, so that people see that on an effective timeline and say, holy shit, look what's happening in Alberta.
Well, here's what's different between, and I don't want to get, this isn't like, I'm not getting too fine on this, so don't hold my feet to the fire when I say this to you, okay? But the difference between say Defy, GCW, ROH when it was around, and I'll even say, you know, the PWAs, the RCWs, the LPWs, you know what the difference really and truly is? Because they all have incredible workers. Every promotion has, you know, 4 or 5 fucking studs, male and female. The difference is production value, right?
Exactly.
What it comes like, people say what they want about the WWE, and the one thing I will say the WWE does better than anyone else, no matter what, and I don't even care what we're talking about, is the look of the production.
Oh man,
whether they have the best
and
workers or
this
not, their
show,
production
like,
looks the best.
And if WWE could write a script, they would be the best movie fucking production company.
Nobody should beat them, and nobody should beat them at anything they do.
Their vignettes are incredible.
Yeah.
And I agree. And I, you know, when I talk about those promotions that I really admire, like you look
I
at
think all those guys have great production. They have great
like,
matches, but they have great production.
well, and you even look at what like Clandestine was doing for or Alberta Professional Wrestling.
I love that, but it was hard to watch for me. It was too dark. I'm an old man. Jesus.
But even look, well,
Turn the lights on.
like I am so happy you see stuff like that coming out, not just from Alberta, not just from BC, but like you see that sort of stuff coming out that's much better than just like a Facebook Live during 12 minutes of your 15-minute main event, right?
No, and Clandestine, I mean, I knocked it on the lighting. That was some shit hot production they put together.
Well, yeah, and by the same token, like I love our production. I think it's incredible. You know, the work that Gavin and Thomas have done is fantastic. And the work that our commentators have done, whether you're looking at Boristad, Warren, like our quote unquote, like consistent group, they're excellent. And then you bring in Michael Allen, Richard Clark, and Goose, like incredible. Do I think that there's stuff that we need to improve to get to those sorts of levels? Absolutely. Like
3 shows in, man, baby steps.
Well, for sure.
Well,
but-
2 shows in actually.
Well, exactly. But
Yeah.
3 shows. We've got April 29th.
April
But-
29th. And where was that? At the Rec Room?
That was at the Rec Room South Common in Edmonton, Alberta.
Rec
If you
Room
guys
South Common.
want, head to the Buckingham on White Avenue. That is located on 105th Street and 82nd Avenue here in Edmonton. They'll have a party bus heading, and they'll have the Last Love Pro Wrestling event playing on the big screens in the Buck. They're great people. Hang out with
And
them.
can I ask you, sir, are these all ages events?
The way I've been advertising them is yes, they are certainly all ages events. You were
And are they licensed events?
they're licensed events. The only way I can like sort of qualify
Take your
it
kids
as
and get
that-
hammered. True pro wrestling.
Well, you're
Hey man, they
certainly-
sell beer at Chuck E. Cheese, to be
you're-
clear.
You're certainly going to hear some curse words, is the best way I can put it.
Right.
You hear the F word, the S word, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
You know, the things that I've said earlier in this podcast, you'll hear them at our shows.
Just
nothing
not from the
like that.
workers, right? From the fans, not the staff.
The fans, sometimes you'll hear them from the staff for sure. So like you will be able to bring your kids. Don't get me
Hey,
wrong.
these are
there.
ears, not garbage cans, sir.
Exactly. We will be making sure that if there are any individuals under 14 that they are attending with a parent, because like for me, I love that pro wrestling is such a family friendly environment. You look at some of the people that come out to the PWA
Yeah.
shows and the RCW shows here, and like, man, if you're making kids happy, then you're doing your job in any setting, right? If kids are
What if
stoked,
I've made some kids
everyone-
cry? What would you say then?
you're doing your job as a heel, because like let's get real, it's that dichotomy of
Right.
reactions.
I remember
Um,
Kurt getting so mad at me and Chris Steele for making kids cry. And I would say, how much do they pay to get in here? He'd be like, $13. I'd be like, that's a cheap memory, Kurt.
Duke, I don't think we want to start on Kurt got mad at me stories. But but for me, like, yes, I love the idea, and I love the fact that even at our last show, you know, man, like Ava Lawless for me deserves every fucking pat on the back that you can give her, because even at our last show I was fucking so happy, man, that like, yes, it's an environment that is a little more you know, the tagline I keep using is punk rock pro wrestling, where you
Right.
can go out, you can have not just a night at a pro wrestling show, but you can have a night out, you can go out, you can have a few drinks, you can have that
Yeah.
environment.
I
But
like that where you're not just sitting watching a show. That's what I like about, you know, and we'll pump up in a minute, but we'll talk about the show, you know, the Tool Shed show.
Oh,
show
yeah,
coming
we
up.
will. But for me, you know, the fact that like not only does Ava like exemplify like that heavy metal punk rock pro
you
wrestling
bet.
vibe that I just fucking love. Like you talk about people that deserves to get signed. Ava, Zoe, TFA. There's the first 3 for me. But like you talk about Ava Lawless, and like I was sitting there during the main event and like walking along the top row of the rec room, and there was a little girl who was with her dad, who was very evidently like very non-confident approaching a pro wrestler and approaching someone they'd seen in the ring. And like even as someone watching that and seeing Ava go up and approach them and like make them feel welcome at a pro wrestling show, like, man, the long answer is by no means is this a non-family friendly show.
Yeah.
Like Ava exemplifies that sort of stuff, as many of our pro wrestlers do. But you're likely going to hear some cursing. There will likely be some middle fingers. There will be things along those sorts of lines of things. My rule with pro wrestling shows: no isms, obics, or ists. You're not going to hear anything racist. You're not going to hear anything
Right.
homophobic, sexist, anything along those lines. Like you're going to hear some curse words, but you're never, at least
Yeah.
I friggin' pray. And if
This
there's
is-
something, they'll be out of there. You're never going to be in an environment where you're going to feel uncomfortable. if
This
that-
is the old man in me talking now. If you have to use swear words to get heat, you're doing it wrong.
and that's completely fair.
You know,
completely
like if-
fair.
Well,
No,
because here's the
we-
thing, man. We have to somewhat set the example. Like, and this is a swear to God, this is the true story. I walked out to the ring in a town we'd never wrestled before. You know, walked out, just come out the curtain, just yelled, "Shut your mouth" to the crowd. So they instantly knew I was the heel. And
Yeah.
I walked by this guy who's like immediate, like probably the first person I walked past. And he says, "F you, you effing sea sucker."
Yeah.
The guy would never seen me before once. And I look beside him, his 9-year-old daughter standing beside him.
Holy cow.
So I look at the guy and I kind of smile and I look back at the girl and I go, "I'm sure she's really proud, buddy." And I walk away. Because I think sometimes you gotta be not the bigger man, because I'm not the bigger man ever. I'm a duster. But I just think at a bar show over 18, man, let her fly. All ages, like, but an all ages show, come on, guys, try to keep the language to a minimum. But it's your show.
You know what? Like for me, I think as long as you're properly advertising, and like anybody who's ever asked, there will be no hardcore matches, no blood, no glass, no nothing like that, unless it's like advertised far in advance. But,
Right.
like, for me, man, I think that the biggest thing you can take in pro wrestling is just honesty, you
Yeah.
know, and not to pull the curtain back much, but like certainly kayfabe exists. But as a promoter, if I'm honest with people of like, hey, if you can come to a show and feel comfortable with the fact that there will be, again, cursing, perhaps some obscene gestures, stuff like that, you will not be ever put in a position where you are subjected to feel less than.
And
see
that
it
happens at every wrestling show.
or whatever. Well, and exactly,
It does.
like,
That
there's-
happens at every wrestling
that's
show.
where, again, as a promoter, I've got to do my
Yeah.
job, you know.
Well, the fans are going to swear at you. Like I've always said, the fans pay their money to say literally whatever they want to me. I get paid my money to say whatever I want back. And if there's little kids there, I probably shouldn't use bad language.
Yep, but that's for the most part too, you know.
Yeah.
Even when I was at my former gig that fired me, like I started shows there too, saying, you know, no isms, ists, or obics.
Yeah,
And
that's beautiful.
There have been people that I've watched get kicked out of shows, and I've had
Yeah.
to awkwardly cover for time because.
Well, I was at the tail end of that era where some of that shit was acceptable. Right. Like I can remember sitting in a locker room going, did he just say that on the house mic?
Well, and there have been times that, like, again, not to name names or anything like that, but like, you know, you've had to mention to people, hey man, like you can't say that
Yeah.
in fucking 2022. You know, again, kayfabe and everything with it certainly exists, and there is the certain right to protect. Jake, come on, I'm talking to a friend. I know you have your key. I'm hanging out. Sorry.
No,
He
that's
likes to
okay.
get interviewed too sometimes. There is certainly, and like you said, man, I take this as serious as a heart attack in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
when it comes to our fans, they are number one to anything of that.
Well, they have to be because ultimately they're paying the bill.
Anybody who
Right.
calls people a mark in 2022 is a fucking idiot by my money, man. Like they are.
Well, what did I say to you earlier? We're all fucking marks, either for the business or ourselves.
that's-
But
you know
one
what,
way or
like,
another, we're all marks.
Marks in that phrase, yeah, but like, oh, these friggin' marks, like, oh, come on, man. Like, these are the people who, like, you're gonna turn around and say are fucking marks when they're coming in and paying your $15, $20, $30 for a ticket. Like, you know what? Kiss the fattest part of my ass, for lack of a better way to put it, man.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
you know,
to me,
they are customers, and
yeah, I call them fans. You know what I mean? I'm more, you know what? If I call somebody a mark, it's never a fan. it's
No,
usually
that's
somebody in the
right.
business that's being a big mark.
Oh, and I laugh off the bat, like I am a mark in the truest sense of the word. Is like fuck, man. at the
I'm
end
wearing
of
a
the day-
Dynamite Kid shirt. Like, come on.
I'm wearing my own merch, Duke.
Well, you got to sell t-shirts. I have no t-shirts to sell.
I got 3 you can find on lovewrestling.ca/shop. Fuck, I'm getting good at this.
Oh,
Um,
slow that down at lovewrestling.ca/shop.
Shop SHOP.
Yeah. I got to write it down slow. I got on rheumatism. Jeez, man.
My goodness, brother. No, but that's the thing for me is like, if you can go out of your way to treat your customers as customers, to treat your fans as fans, certainly you need to take care of the professional wrestling
Well-
side of things, for lack of a better way to put it.
You know, I
But you
think
also need to make sure that the people who are going out of their way to pay you their hard-earned money, pay their bills, or pay your bills, excuse me,
Yes.
using their hard-earned money,
give you their time, give you their money,
you do right by that
you know.
11 out of 10 times.
Well,
11.
and the thing is, like I always say, like if you wonder how customer service should be, and this is people a lot of times like, well, you know, I get shit customer service. It's a change thing. And I was actually literally 2 weeks ago talking to my wife, said, I got to figure out how I can possibly actually create a course so that people can give better customer service. Because quite frankly, I'll tell you, I'm a customer service expert. But my one thing I tell people consistently about customer service is just put yourself in the shoe of your consumer. That's the easiest way to do it. What do I, as a wrestling fan, you're still unmuted. What do I, as a wrestling fan, want to see? Yeah, the dogs are going mental.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I'm just trying to shoot a message off to be like, hey, are you here, Ben? I apologize.
Yeah, no worries, man.
Nuts. But yeah, like it's that easy, man. If you're taking care of the people who are again doing right by you, like you said, it's
Yeah, just
you
think,
know,
just
bu-
you know,
well, business isn't easy, like by any means. And anybody who's gone out of their way to put money, put time, put effort towards a promotion, fuck yeah, man. Again, like I've put on 2 shows. One of them was hugely helped by Force Pro Wrestling, so like 1.5 at best. Um, like all of them deserve my respect and anyone's respect.
yeah. And can we,
You
sorry,
know,
can we
I
show
certainly-
who's in the office at FPW? Is that still Ivan?
I really don't know. It is
Okay.
Ivan. It is other individuals that there are a few others. I just don't know if I need to fave this one, to be quite honest with you. So
Okay,
I will,
okay, we'll keep that
I
on
will
the
fave
DL.
this one in
But
lieu
shout
of-
out to Force Pro anyway. Shout out to the office at Force Pro Wrestling.
Well, and by my money, man, like Albertan professional wrestling, Canadian pro wrestling has never been better. We're very lucky, at least as Albertans, that like, yes, Stampede is our legacy as a province.
Right.
BC, like ECCW did great work for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
But when we look
All
at
Star was an institution there for a long time too.
and still are, you know,
Yeah.
like and there are great promotions right now, Big West 365. But I think right now when you're talking about Canadian pro wrestling, like, man, I'm biased and I certainly have like the recency bias to it too, but like it's never been better. You know, you look coast to coast, you look person to person. We're a very, very lucky country to have the people we do in it.
Yeah. The toughest thing for us in Western Canada in particular is just getting the names out there. You know. I read your lips on that one.
Yeah, you know what? That was a yell. He earned that one.
He got shouty. No, and I mean that's one of the things, and I used to say this, and people that watch more wrestling than me have confirmed it. But you know, I used to look back at our roster at Stampede, you know, when I was breaking it, when like, you know, Harry Smith and TJ were just, you know, they were, geez, say 16 and 11. You know what I mean? They were just babies.
Nuts.
And we had this roster of guys that literally I said, like, you know, you'd see say, you know, the big things you'd see were like XPW or, you know, kind of these barbed wire city promotions. But I would said like any independent wrestling I'd ever seen at that time, I'd always say like our promotion's better than all of them. And I think that's an important thing to be able to say. You have to have that confidence. You know what I mean? Now, but it's also important to be able to look and say, you know what, as much as I love wrestler XYZ, that person just isn't cutting it. I got to get them off my show and see if I can bring somebody new in. That doesn't mean you fire them. That means you put them on the shelf to see if you can bring somebody fresh in.
Exactly, man.
You know?
Like there's a lot that goes into that, you know, and having that confidence, like you said, is incredibly important because for me, there's so many promotions I look across the country to. Like I mentioned NEW, I mentioned Defy down in Seattle, but like you look at Ontario and you look at what Crossbody is doing, and you look at what Smash is doing in C4, and like, you know, there are a lot of things that I love about those promotions. There are a lot of things that I think as far as a broadcast, as far as a show goes, as far as stuff I can do better as a showrunner promoter goes that I can do. But it's also very cool for me that like, you know, looking at those promotions that I've considered the standard for months in some cases, years in some cases, decades in some cases, I can look at them and say, man, like, fuck, LPW holds up to some of this stuff. And I think we do better in a lot of stuff. And there's stuff that I look at them and say, when we improve, you know, aspect B of what our LPW live streams are, or I can put our, you know, show sheets together better in way X, like Smash does, whatever it might be.
Right.
You take from the best and you feel confident in what you have going.
Yeah. Well, it's not wrong to look at what other people are doing right.
Oh, hell yeah.
But it's also not wrong to look at what they're doing poorly.
Yeah. And you're losing if you're not. If you're not going out there, you know, it probably should be the title of your podcast this week, Duke. But like, you know, I keep going back to these pieces of like fundamental advice. But like, if you're stagnating, you're not improving. And if
You
you're
can
not
only tread water for so long.
exactly, you
Yeah.
always drown. You know, I was a fairly okay swimmer. I could scull water for 4 minutes, but let me tell you,
Right.
you got to 4.5. Well, Spence had the lifeguard diving in.
Well,
Half the time.
and that's the thing,
So-
man. Or how long do you even want to tread water? That's the other thing, right? Is like, you shoot for your goal but there comes a point where it's like, you're doing the same thing. And then is there a point of diminishing returns and things like that? So as long as you feel excited about what you're doing, you're seeing growth, you're enjoying, and most importantly, you're enjoying what you're doing, man, you just let her buck.
Yeah, man. And I'm loving it. It's certainly a promoter out here, Duke, told me as I walked his gear to the car, said, Spencer, if you ever want to do anything in professional wrestling, you're going to have to do it yourself. 4 years later, I own my ring outright. That's covered. We've run 2 shows that I am incredibly proud of. The thing that I'm most proud of is we've run 2 shows full of not just incredible pro wrestling, but full of incredible people. Whether, again, you're talking about commentary, whether you're talking about video production, whether you're talking about backstage agents, fucking X, Y, and Z. Dude, it's pretty cool at this point, if you asked me 6 months ago, Spence, where are you going to be? The answer honestly was going to be, full shoot, engaged.
Right.
But I spent my money that was going to go to an engagement ring on a fucking pro wrestling ring. And
Hey, one ring or another.
that's it. If you love it, you should put a ring on it. So
Yeah,
I
man.
bought a pro wrestling ring. We're promoting what I am very confident in being some of the best pro wrestling shows in Canada right now. And after 2 shows coming up on our 3rd on April 29th here in Edmonton, Alberta, it's pretty cool to be this confident that like show 3 is going to be better than show 2.
Right.
And show 4 is going to be better than show 3. We've got a year-long contract. We're going to be in Edmonton, Alberta at the Rec Room South Common until October fucking 21st. So you can expect to be here in frickin' a month, 2 months, whatever it might be, Duke. Your tickets are at the door. You handsome. You can be here at the last Friday of every month. Any opportunity you've got to come up to Edmonton, whether it's 3 or 30 hours away, friends. It's pretty cool to feel confident that we're getting to the point that we're going to be one of the promotions, but it's pretty cool to feel already that we've done a great job of showcasing some of the best in fucking Canadian pro wrestling.
Well, here's what I'm going to give you. And this is, I've never wanted to necessarily say this out loud, but this is the
Fuck you, Spencer.
No, not at all.
I have to ruin a good moment.
Well,
Dude.
my affiliation with PWA, right? I've been with PWA since maybe show 5 at PWA. I was there pretty early. Kurt and I go way back. I think I met Kurt first in '98. So that's a different thing. Having said that, I've been remiss to promote any other wrestling show. You see my Twitter, you see my Facebook. I don't know if you follow me on, if you're one of my massive 240 followers on Instagram. But you don't really
believe I follow you on all platforms.
But you don't see me promote.
Son of a bitch.
You don't see me promote any other wrestling shows. You don't see me share a lot of shit. You'll see me promote like Natalia, you know what I mean? Or Harry, right?
Yeah.
But, you have my word that because I'm comfortable first and foremost with who you are, your passion for the business, why you're in the business in the first place, and the roster of staff you have in the office you're working with, I will promote LPW. That's the best thing I can say. Like, I'm not saying it means a lot, but for me, that's all I can tell you is that I'm willing to promote shows.
And I was going to interrupt you to say that, like, it does mean a lot. Cause like you and I have talked privately, personally on your last podcast you did with me, shit. Dude, anything you've got coming my way means a lot. Cause like I grew up with you being one of those pro wrestlers that like, I certainly love to love. And I certainly love to hate at certain moments.
God, I hated being a baby face. God, I hated it.
Hey, for what it's worth, man, you certainly had someone in mind that pop for you every time. So that means a lot, man, because it meant a lot as well right off the bat that you said that I do pro wrestling and LPW does pro wrestling the right way, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of things, strictly having a handshake, people don't agree with that. I've always said to people that when they come into Love Pro Wrestling, it's a hugging promotion. I hug every single fucking person that walks through the doors. I think the respect can be shown in a lot of different ways, whether you handshake, whether you acknowledge, whether you fucking hug some best friends that you haven't seen in years. Shout out Alicia. It's cool, man. As long as you can show respect in that sort of way, and that's pontificating on a point. It means a lot that you've taken a chance and chosen to support us. Because,
no, man, it's not a chance though. It's literally it's mostly a reflection on my relationship with you. Honestly,
means a lot, dude. It does.
Well, I'm pretty loyal to Kurt, and if I think someone's a competitor, you know what I mean, I'm not going to fuck with them. But at the same time, if somebody's my friend, how can I not promote their business? And especially when my friend has multiple of my other friends working at their business. So,
man, at the end of the day,
I simply support what you guys are doing.
I appreciate it. And at the end of the day, man, Kurt Sorokin is one of the biggest reasons that I'm a fucking pro wrestling fan, not an Albertan, not an indie, not any a wrestling fan. Dude, the first show that I attended was at the Century fucking Casino, and it was one of the PWA anniversary shows. And I was lucky enough to see a fatal four-way between Casey Spinelli, Taya Valkyrie, fucking Veronica Vice, and Tennille Dashwood. And you want to talk about great talent?
That's a pretty sick match.
Right? MRB was still going by Chucky. I got to see Randy Myers wrestle Jack Sloan in a fucking ladder match. And yeah,
who doesn't miss Jack Sloan? Old T-Bone. I miss that guy a lot.
Man. And you talk about great first experiences in pro wrestling, and like, I've certainly sung my praises. I've certainly had my hesitations about being fired by a certain promotion here in Alberta.
You're nobody until you get fired. If you get fired by that pumpkin head, well, fuck, who cares anyway?
Well, honestly, it's just fun to say every so often on a podcast.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't go too hard because the guy's generally nice to me, but come on, man. Anyways.
Was to me too until he fired me. But
you know what, man? Here's the thing. I'll tell you right now. I went and worked for, you know what? Let's actually talk some shit right here. And I don't mean this to talk shit and hammer a guy into the ground that's not here to defend himself. But hopefully he sees this and it's a fucking teachable moment for him. Because I went to work for that guy and we kind of worked out a deal before I went there. And before I was out of the ring in the first match, he'd come out to the ring, started booking at fucking ringside, kind of changed our deal, and then even went further away from it down the road. So I literally quit that guy. I told him, I think maybe the day of the show, I wasn't coming because he fucked with somebody else. And that's kind of who I am. Like, if you can fuck with me, but you fuck with my friends, we're finished right now. And so he didn't live. He lived up to his word in that he met his guarantee to me. No questions asked. I got paid before I wrestled, and that's cool. That's, you know what I mean? That there's an element of respect that goes for that. But at the same time, when you're not professional enough to just stick to what even we had worked out, yeah, go fuck yourself. And I pretty much told him so.
See some real Canadian wrestling. Come out to the Rec Room South Common on April 29th. We are going to be putting on a hell of a show for Love Professional Wrestling. I am going to have a hell of a time ring announcing my first show since April 8th, coming up this weekend. If you're in Calgary, Alberta, I'm very excited to be making my return. Dungeon Wrestling is going to be putting on a show with Toolshed Brewery. It's going to be my first opportunity to work with them. I am so excited to work with a bunch of the best of Albertan wrestling, though. Terry is going to be there if you're a FUBAR fan. I'm going to sell you on that first and foremost. But
Terry's a wild cat.
Oh, man, and if I've got to sell you on FUBAR, then I don't need to sell you on the Great Professional Wrestling, MRB versus Mo Jabari. If you saw it at Battle at the Dome, you're going to see a hell of a better match coming up this Friday. We've got Dewey Robson. We've got Raj Singh. We've got a hell of a talented roster coming your way this Friday in Calgary at the Toolshed Brewery. The tickets are sold out, but there might be some at the door, or maybe shoot Love Wrestling a message. You can find us on social media at Love Wrestling CA, whether it's where videos are viewed, podcasts are listened to, or interviews are found. You can find us there. Duke, I didn't know if that was the place to plug my shit.
That was actually the perfect.
I was bitching about perfect. I was bitching about because you can't see me coming up this Saturday or Sunday in Edmonton, Alberta. But if you want to see some incredible stuff coming from the best of Alberta, BC, Ontario, and everywhere in between, this month's edition. I almost said this week's shit. I'm still sticking to plugging last week. This month's edition of Love Pro Wrestling, LPW3, We're a Happy Family, will be taking place at the Rec Room, South Common. Tickets are available on our eventbrite.ca page. You can just look up Love Pro Wrestling there. You, again, can head to wherever Love Wrestling is found, whether videos are viewed, podcasts are played, audio is listened to, whatever may be found in between at Love Wrestling CA. Duke, you're the man. I appreciate you having me on. So plug your shit. I ain't the draw here. Thanks for having me on.
You are the draw. I have no shit. Anyone that's watching this knows my shit. They know I'm a piece of shit.
Don't pop me while I'm drinking.
Oh, man. No, man, it was so good to get together with you and just sit down and shoot the shit. I'm glad to hear a little bit about Love Pro Wrestling. And I'll be honest, here's the thing that other pro wrestling promotions don't do, and I'm gonna end with this massive compliment. Lots of people, lots of promotions say I'm coming out. Oh, watch our website tomorrow at noon. We're gonna have a big announcement, or 3 hours, we're gonna have a big announcement. One thing you did that constantly stimulated curiosity and made me click your links to see what it was were the I don't want to grow up illustrations of the individual people involved.
Man, thank you. And you know what?
Love that gimmick.
And the last thing that I will certainly do, and if you've got the opportunity to clip this one for me, Duke, please feel free, because of anything that I am lucky to have, I am lucky to have the staff of Love Pro Wrestling. Whether it's the video people, Gavin, huge shout out, Thomas, huge shout out, whether it's our head of officiating, Judge Ben Omen, whether it's MRB, whether it's Thaddeus Archer III, and whether it's our graphic designer, Zach Ralph. If you got the opportunity to listen to Smark and Friends, it comes out every Friday on lovewrestling.ca. But more importantly, as far as it relates to Duke's fucking rad compliment there, I'm a huge Descendants fan. And when I approached Zach with the opportunity to illustrate 25 people as Milo, I was a little nervous because there aren't many people who would want to take that on. If you guys have any needs in graphic design, whether it's professional wrestling or otherwise, Zach Ralph is your human being for it, because Duke, I appreciate you saying that.
That was a cool thing, man.
Appreciate you complimenting Love Wrestling, but in the nicest way to me, man. That was all Zach. That guy is the fucking man. Our illustrations, our graphics, anything that Love Pro Wrestling puts out graphics wise, all him.
That kid's right there is perfect marketing. On that note, at Love Wrestling, Spencer Love, at Spenny Love, one of my favorite people in the world of pro wrestling. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Dude, thank you for having me. Always appreciate it. Love you, friend. Your podcast fucking rocks almost as much as you do.
Thanks, buddy.
Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth.